This is the pre-lab video for the experiment Stoichiometry and Gravimetric analysis. You'll be reacting an unknown amount of sodium carbonate with an excess of strontium chloride. After purifying the product, you'll determine the following: how much product is present, how much sodium carbonate must have been present to produce that amount of product, and how much sodium carbonate is contained in a 575-liter solution. A few notes about safety. Always wear safety goggles to protect your eyes and do not touch any chemicals. Do not heat glassware that is broken, chipped, or cracked. This experiment is going to be divided into 2 days. The first day you'll be creating the precipitate. To start, measure and record the mass of a piece of filter paper. You'll notice that this is folded in half twice. That will be helpful for not only putting the filter paper on the balance, but also for when you put it in your funnel later on in the experiment. Next, you'll set up a filtering apparatus. What you'll need is a ring stand, a funnel holder, a funnel, your filter paper, and a beaker to receive any filtrate that goes below. Use the largest beaker that's available to you in your drawer. I believe that's the 400 milliliter beaker that should go underneath there. Then add a little bit of distilled water onto the filter paper so that it is wetted a bit and so that the filter paper isn't flopping around in the funnel. Next, label a clean, dry 150 milliliter beaker and measure and record its mass. Set this aside. This will be used at the end of this first day because this will be where your precipitate goes and it will be put in the oven overnight. Now it's time for the reaction. Measure 15 milliliters of the sodium carbonate solution into a graduated cylinder, record the exact volume that you used, and then pour the solution into a clean, empty 250 milliliter beaker. Carefully wash the graduated cylinder and then rinse it with distilled water. You're doing this process because you don't want to have any contamination in the graduated cylinder before you actually mix the two chemicals together. So this will make sure that there isn't any sodium carbonate left in the graduated cylinder when you do the next part. Then measure out 25 milliliters of the 0.3 molar strontium chloride solution into the graduated cylinder. Record the exact volume used. Pour the solution into the beaker that has the sodium carbonate solution in it already, and gently stir the resulting solution and precipitate with a glass stirring rod. It should turn a milky, chalky white. To make sure all the reactant of our unknown, the sodium carbonate, is completely converted into product, we're going to add another 10 milliliters of strontium chloride. So measure that into the graduated cylinder and then pour into the reaction beaker and stir to mix again. Once the precipitate has settled, slowly pour the mixture into the funnel. Be careful not to overfill the funnel because some of the precipitate could be lost between the filter paper and the funnel. Use the rubber spatula to transfer as much of the precipitate into the funnel as possible. Rinse the rubber spatula into the beaker with a small amount of distilled water and pour this solution into the funnel as well. Rinse the beaker several more times with small amounts of distilled water and pour the rinsed water into the funnel each time. After all the solution and rinses have drained through the funnel, slowly rinse the precipitate on the filter paper in the funnel with distilled water to remove any soluble impurities. Carefully remove the filter paper from the funnel and place it in the 150 milliliter beaker that you labeled with your name. Then place the beaker in the drying oven. For best results, allow this precipitate to dry overnight. The second day of the experiment, measure and record the mass of the beaker with the filter paper and precipitate, and then dispose of the precipitate in a designated waste container as denoted by your teacher. Clean up the lab and all equipment after you've used them, and dispose of substances according to the directions you've been given. Wash your hands thoroughly after all the work in the lab is finished and before you leave the lab. Follow the PostLab directions as indicated by your teacher.